Welcome to this tutorial. I'm Thomas Weibenfalk, a developer and instructor from Sweden. I created this tutorial for Free Code Camp, and Free Code Camp is great. I also want to tell you that I have my own YouTube channel, Weibenfalk. But for now, let's get started with this. Alright, this is the quiz that we're building in this tutorial. So we can start and we get some questions here, and we have 4 different choices to choose from. So if we press here, you can see that it showed me that I answered incorrectly, and it also showed me the correct answer, and then we can move on through the questions here. And this is all built with React and TypeScript, so that's what I'm going to show you in this tutorial. So this is the finished application. All right, so let's get started. We're going to bootstrap our application with Create React App, and we're going to set it to use TypeScript. So if we check the site here, create-react-app.dev, we can see that they have an option for adding TypeScript. So we can use npx create react app and the name of the application --template and TypeScript, and this will install everything with TypeScript support for us. So we can do that. So let's go inside of our console, clear it, and then we type in npx create-react-app. And then our application is going to be named React-quiz. In this case, we type in --template and TypeScript. And we wait for it. So this will install everything with TypeScript support for us. So we just have to wait, and it will be bootstrapped for us. Okay, that went smooth. Let's see what we've got. We have our React quiz folder, so we can navigate inside of that one, cd react-quiz. And then I open up the code editor. We're going to clean up our product a little bit. As you can see, if we look in the folder here, we have some files here. And inside the src folder, we can actually remove some stuff that we're not going to need. Set up tests, service worker, the logo, the index.css, the app.test.tsx, and the app.css. Remove those files. Like that, and then we're going to do some refactoring here in the index.tsx file. We can remove this one where we import the CSS file. We can remove this one to import a service worker, and also remove it down below here. And this should be it. Save the file, and then in the app.tsx file, we remove the CSS import and the logo. And for now, we're just going to say quiz inside of here and do some auto formatting and save it. Then we're going to use style components to style this one. I'm going to style it at the end of the tutorial, so we're just going to build the functionality first, but we can install the dependency for the style components, and we can install it by typing npm i style-components. And as this is in TypeScript, we're going to do this application. We also have to install the types for this one, and we can grab those ones from at types/styled-components, like that. So we first install the style components library itself, and then we install the types for the style components, and we do it in one go. So press enter. All right, then we can just start this up to see that it works. npm start, and we can go to localhost port 3000, and you can see that it says quiz here, and that's great. We know that it's working. So localhost :3000. That's the dev server that this one creates for us. And you can see you can also just click here, and it will open up in your browser, hopefully. All right, so that's the dependencies. We only need to install style components for this one as a dependency, but we have to do some more stuff here. First, we're going to have this nice little summer background image, and I grabbed that one from unsplash.com. And I found this image down below here. It's Natte Adnan that has photographed this image. So that's the one that I'm using. So we can just download this one. Or if you want to use another image, you can use that also. So if we check out this image, it should be in the downloaded folder. And you can see I actually have 2 of them here because I've already downloaded it before. So let's go inside the code editor again. And inside the src folder, we're going to create another folder that we call images. Maybe overkill for this one as we only have one image, but I like to have a good structure on things. So images, and then we grab this image and drag it inside of there. And I can actually rename it also, because it has this strange long name. We keep the name of the guy that has taken the photo. All right, so that's the images. We're also gonna need a couple of Google fonts. So go back to the web browser, and I open this one up for us. I'm gonna use a font that's called Catamaran. I don't know if I pronounced that correctly. I'm gonna use the weight of 700. So select this one. I already selected it here. And I'm also gonna use a font that's called Fascinate Inline. So these are the two fonts that I'm gonna use. So I've selected that one also. So you can browse the fonts, you can search for them here, and then you add them, and then we get this embed link here. So copy this link, go back to our code editor, and we're gonna navigate inside of the public folder, and we have the index.html, and in this case, we're gonna paste it in here. So we import it in this index.html. This is the file that is run when the application is built. So we can import it here just like in a regular HTML file. Save it, and this will make sure that we have those fonts. All right, so that's the fonts. I can close this once, and then we can just briefly check out the API that we're going to use for the questions. So I found this Open Trivia API. As you can see, we can configure it. We can select which category we want. I'm going to use the any category. We can select difficulty. I'm not going to implement to select difficulty in the UI, but I'm going to implement it in the app itself. So you can change it in the code. And we can also change to have multiple choice or true or false. We're going to have multiple choice, and we're going to use the default encoding. And if we click generate API URL, it should generate the URL for us up here. So this is the URL, and this will give us a JSON response with the questions and the answers. As we just get this object, it will be really easy to cheat if you want to do that, because you can always check the questions and the answers in the code. Because if we want to make a serious quiz game, we probably have to create a proxy API or already use an API that won't show us the answers in the client. So we have to make a request to a server, and then it will get a response with answers and stuff like that. But in our case, for example, if you have a React DevTools, you can just check the state and you will see all the questions there and the answers. So it's a very simple implementation of a quiz game. And that should be it for the setup. Let's move on to create the logic for the application. And then last in the tutorial, we're going to create the UI, the design for the application. Okay, make sure that you have the application running by typing in npm start in the folder that we created with Create React App. And it will hopefully show quiz for you. And it's also a good idea to have the console open, so we can open that one up. Like that. And then move back to our code editor. The first thing I'm going to do now is to create a couple of new files and a folder, because we are going to create a component for our question card. So inside our SRC folder, I create a new folder that I call components. And then I'm going to create a file inside of that one that I call question card.tsx. Capital Q, capital C, question card.tsx. And we can just scaffold this one out for now. So we import React from React. And then we create a const question card and an arrow function. And for now, we can create a div that says question card. And we export default question card. Do some auto formatting and save it. So that is our question card component. We're going to come back to this later. And then inside of the SRC folder, we're going to create two more files. So first, we have a file that we call api.ts, capital letters on API. And then we have another file that I'm going to call utils.ts, like that. So the API file is going to be used where I create the logic for fetching data from the API. And the utils file is just going to keep a small function that we're going to use to randomize the answers to the questions. All right, and we're going to come back to those also. And then later we're going to create more files here, because when we create the styles with the styles component, I like to have the styles in a separate file. So we're going to create separate files for those also. But we do that when we've created all the logic for this quiz game. So let's start off in the app.tsx file. This is going to be the main file for our application. And if you want, you can change this one to an arrow function. I like to have arrow function, but this is highly subjective. If you don't like arrow functions, you can use regular functions. So it's okay. This is the main component in our application. So if we start scaffolding this one out, we're going to have one function that we fire off when we start the quiz. So const start trivia or start quiz. Start trivia, I think that is fine. This one is going to be async because we're going to make the API call from this one. So we can already now mark it with async. So we leave it empty for now. Then we're going to have one function that we're going to trigger when the user selects an answer. So const check answer equals, this one is going to take in the event like this. And you can see that it complains here now because this is Typescript that's telling us we haven't specified a type for this one. So it's implicitly set to any, and we should set a type for it. So the event is going to be a mouse event, and we can specify it even more. So we specify it to HTML button element, and we end it with a angled bracket like that, something like that. And of course, we need to have a colon here also. And as we're in React, I guess we have to tell it react.mouseEvent also, like that. So react.mouseEvent, and then we specify it even more by telling it it's from an HTML button element. So that's how you type this event. And then we're going to have a function that will trigger when the user click for the next question. So const next question equals, and in this one, we don't actually need the event. So we just create an empty arrow function like this. So this is all the functions that we need for this trivia. And of course, we're going to come back to them in a second. But first, we're going to scaffold out our JSX here in the return statement. So we wrap it in a parenthesis first, like this. And then we have the wrapper-div that's called app now. We're going to rename these ones also later when we create the style components, but for now they will be divs with class names. And first we're going to have an h1 tag with a header for the quiz, and we call it React quiz, like that. Then we're going to have a button to start the game. So we create a button with a class name of start, and we set the onClick handler to the function that we created, start trivia, like that. And it can just say start inside of it. So that's the button. Then we're going to have a paragraph with a class name of score. And this is the one that's going to hold the score. So for now, we're just setting score like this. Then we're going to have a paragraph with a class name that is telling us loading questions. You could, of course, implement a spinner or something if you want to do that instead. And then we're going to have our question card. So we can import that one up here. I mark it with components and import question card from. It's in our components folder. And then we have the question card like that. So down below here, we create the question card like that. And the last thing we're going to have is a button below everything of this that is used to click to the next question. So button, class name equals next. And for this one, we have an onClick handler, next question, like that. And we can just type out next question and do some auto formatting. So you can see that we're using the next question and the start trivia here. This one here is going to be sent in by props to the question card component. So we can create the question card component now. So let's go inside the question card.tsx file. Just as before, we create parentheses here. We can make an implicit return on this one, so we don't have to have a return statement. And as we're in TypeScript now, we have to type the props for this one. So we create a type, call it props. You can call it whatever you want. It doesn't need to have the name props. First, we're going to give it the question. And this one is going to be a string. The question is always going to be a string. Then we're going to give it all the answers. And the answers is going to be an array of strings. So string, array, this is how you type an array of strings. Then we're going to give it a callback. And for now, we can just set it to any. And we have the user answer. That's the answer that the user is going to give us. It's also going to be a string. We have the question number. It's going to be a number. Question number, like that. Then we have total questions. That one is also going to be a number. So these are the props for this component, but how do we specify it to use these props? First of all, we have to specify this one to be a functional component. So just after the name here, we have a colon, and from React, we have something that's called FC, so .fc. These are the types from React itself, so it will tell Typescript that this is a functional component. And if we want to specify props, we do that inside of angled brackets like this. So we tell it that we want to use these props that we created up here. And then, just as usual, we can destructure out the props. So we have the question, we have the answer. You can see that we get this nice auto completion here where it tells us what we've got. We have the callback. We have the user answer. We have the question number, and we have the total questions. I'm going to do some auto formatting here because I have this insanely large font because I want you to be able to see what I'm typing, but it's hard to work with it actually. So these are the props that we have now, and now we can use them inside our component. So this div is going to be a wrapper div. I'm going to create parentheses here again. So we have the wrapper div, we have the ending parenthesis. Remove some stuff there. So this is the wrapper div. We're going to display the current question that we're on. So we can do that in a p tag with a class name of number. And then we can type out question, colon. And then from the props, we're going to grab the question number like that. And then we do a /, and then we grab the total questions like so. Because we're in JSX now, so when you want to grab a JavaScript variable or create a JavaScript expression, we do that inside of curly brackets. All right, so that is going to indicate what question the user is on. And then we have the question itself. And in the response from the API, we're going to get some HTML. In React, we have something that's called dangerously set inner HTML that we can use when we want to render out some HTML. And it's called like this because it is dangerous to use because you never know what can be injected there. In our case, we know that it's safe, so we can use it here. So we create a p tag, and we use dangerously set inner HTML, and we have curly brackets. Then we have a new set of curly brackets because it's an object, and we have underscore HTML, and we're going to give it the question. No, it shouldn't be the question number. It should be the question like that. All right. Then we're going to have a wrapper div for all the answers to the question. And we're going to map through the answers because we have all the answers in this prop here. It should actually be called answers with an S and not answer. So we can change that one, answers with an S. So down below here in the wrapping div, we create curly brackets and we have the answers .map. So we map through them. We have an answer like that. We create an inline arrow function. We can use implicit return here also. So we create parentheses. And then we have a wrapper for our button. So we create another set of divs. And inside of there, we create a button. It's going to be disabled depending on if the user has made a choice, if the user has answered something. So we set it to disabled equals user answer. This one is going to be a Boolean. So it will be disabled if this one is user answer. Yeah, I set it to a string. You can see that Typescript complains here now because I said it's the string, it will complain. We will make sure that this will get a true or false value later. So we have to change this one now. So it should be a Boolean instead. You can see that it won't complain anymore. So this is one of the great strengths with Typescript. It will tell you when you code if you do something wrong. And you can correct it before the bug even happens. All right, then we have an on-click handler on this one, and this is going to call the callback. Like so, we close it, and we're going to have some text for the button also. And this one is also going to get the text in HTML format. So we create a span and dangerously set inner HTML equals curly brackets, and we have the object with another set of curly brackets, underscore underscore HTML. And we give it the answer in this case. And then we self-close the span, do some auto formatting, see that everything works. I think it is working. Yeah. Save the file. But now you can see inside of the app.tsx file, if we go back to that file, so you can see that it complains now because it wants the props. And we're going to give it the props also, but first I'm going to create the states that we're going to use for this application, and we're going to have 6 of them, actually, because I'm going to split them up. That's great with hooks now. You don't need to have one big state. We can have a few of them instead. So up here first, we import use state like that. And just down below here in the component at the beginning, we're going to create our states. First, we're going to have a loading state. So const loading and set loading like that. And we use state. We set it to false as a default. Then we're going to have the questions like that and set questions. And we use state and we give it an empty array for now. We're also going to specify this later and give it a type, but we can't do that yet because I'm going to create a type when we create the function for the API. Then we have a state with a number and set number, and this is going to be the number that the user is currently on, the question number. So use state. We're going to start at 0. Then we're going to have a state for the user answers. And set user answers like that. And use state. And we give it an empty array as initial value. And then we're going to have the score and set score. And use state. And this one is 0 as initial value. And then I'm also going to have one that's called game over. And set game over so that we can keep track on when the game is finished. So use state and we set it to true initially. Okay, so let's give this question card its props. First we have the question number, and this one we're going to get from number, but we're going to add 1 because the number is going to be used for the array, and the array starts at 0, and we don't want to start our questions with a 0, so we add 1 to this one because that will make the first question to have the number 1. Okay, then we have the total questions, and for this one we're going to create a const up here, const, and we have capital letter total underscore questions equals 10, and this one is because it will be easy to just change this for us if we want to modify the total questions. So total questions is going to be the total underscore questions, like that. Then we're going to have the question itself, and we're going to grab this question from our question state. And we have the question state here. It's going to be an array of questions. So if we want to give it the current question, we can do that with questions, and then we grab from number, and then we give it the question itself. And you can see that it complains now because for now TypeScript doesn't know that it exists, so it complains here to us. Then we're going to give it the answers, and we have our answers also in the questions number and in a property that's called answers. Like that, and then we're going to give it the actual answer from the user. So user answer equals, and then we check if we have some user answers. We create a turner operator, and if we have some answers in the user answer state, user answers, we can grab the correct answer by specifying the number. Otherwise, we just give it undefined like that. And you can see here, yeah, it should say user answers. And this one will complain now because I realized that if we go back to the question card, you can see that at tell this one that it's a Boolean. It's actually not. So we set it to any for now. Go back to our app.tsx file and you can see that it won't complain now. And the last one we're going to give it is the callback. And it's going to be the check answer like that. And now you can see that it won't complain here because we're giving it all the props. It will just complain here because it doesn't know that these properties exist. But we'll fix this soon. So I think we have everything set up now actually, and we can move over to the api.ts file and create the function that will grab the data from the API. So we export const fetch quiz questions like that. And this one is going to be async, and we're going to have a couple of parameters here because we want to be able to specify how many questions that we want to grab. So we can create a parameter amount. It's going to be a number. And then we have another one that we call difficulty. And this is going to be easy, medium, or hard because we can grab these from the API. So we should be able to set it here. How do we specify this? Because it can only be easy, medium, or hard. And in TypeScript, we have something that's called an enum. So export enum. We call it difficulty like this. And we can specify the constants inside of here. We have one that's called easy. And it's going to equal easy. Then we have the medium one, and it's going to, of course, equal medium. Make sure you have a comma after these ones also. And then we have hard. And it's going to equal hard. And I actually want to have a capital D on difficulty. So we can specify this parameter as the enum difficulty. All right? And this will make sure that we only can use these values and it won't accept anything else. That way we won't make a mistake of typing something like this, for example, because then the endpoint won't work. So that's the parameters for this one. Then we want to specify the return type. It's going to be a promise of, I can actually remove this one for now because we're going to console log out what we get from the API first, and then we can see what type we're going to specify for this one. So inside here, we create a const with an endpoint. I create a template literal with backticks. So https://open tdb.com/api.php $amount, and then we have an equal sign, and then we can grab this variable here, amount. So we create the $, curly brackets, and give it the amount. And this one that I'm typing in now is, of course, from the API. So we could, of course, just also copied it. Then we have an ampersand, and we're going to give it the next variable here. So difficulty equals, and then we have a $, curly brackets, and we give it the difficulty argument. And the last one, we have another ampersand, and we set the type equals to multiple. So as you can see, you can configure this as you want. In this case, I'm just making sure that we can change the amount and the difficulty, but you could change the type and stuff like that and really customize it how you want it to be. We end it with a semicolon. All right, so that's the endpoint. Then in a const that I call data, I'm going to await, because we are going to hit that endpoint now. So I await, and then I have a parenthesis. I await again. I get a lot of questions on why I'm using double awaits. And that's because first we await the fetch itself, and then we're going to await when we convert it to JSON. So await fetch, parenthesis, we give it the endpoint like that. And then here we have .json, and we call that one. So this will await the fetch itself, and then it will await when we convert it to JSON. And for now, we're just going to console log out the data. Like so. We're going to come back to this one. Go back to the app.tsx file. And I'm actually going to comment out this one for now so we don't have an error. And up here, we can import that function that we created. So import fetch quiz questions from // and we have it in the api.ts file, like so. And what I want to do now is to try this function out to see what we've got. So we have this function here, fetch quiz questions, really hard to say for me. And we can call it here, so console log fetch quiz questions, like that. And we need to give it 2 parameters. Now you can see that it complains, expected 2 arguments, but got 0. So this is also great with Typescript. It's telling us all the time if we're doing something wrong. So first we're going to give it the total questions, and then we need to give it easy, medium, or hard. And if you remember in the api.ts file, we created this enum here that I also export. So that means that we can import this one in the app.tsx file. So I'm going to mark this one with types, and I import difficulty from /API, like so. And that means that we can use it here in our console log as the second argument from difficulty. We're going to grab the easy one, save it, go back to our browser. You can see that we have everything here now. And here is the response. You can see that we have a response code of 0 and we have the result. So this is what we care about here. We have the 10 questions here. And now we can see the structure of the object, the question object here. By looking at this one here, we can actually create a type for this one. So we have a category, the correct answer, and difficulty. These are all strings. Then we have the incorrect answers in an array. And then we have the question and the type. So let's move back to the code. And inside of the api.ts file, I'm going to specify the type for each question. So type, I'm going to export this one also. Export type question equals. It's always good to export stuff like this because you never know when you need it in your application. So first, if we go back to the browser, you can see that we have the category, correct answer, difficulty, incorrect answer, question, and type. So now it's just a matter of specifying this here, category. This one is going to be string. We have the correct underscore answer. This one is also going to be a string. We have the difficulty. It's a string. We have the incorrect underscore answer. And this one is going to be an array of string. So string and an array. We have the question itself. It's going to be a string. And then we have the type. It's also going to be a string. But one thing I want to do here also, because I want to modify the state that I get back here, because in this case, we have the correct answer in a separate property, and we have the incorrect answers in a separate array. I want to have them in the same array, because what I want to do later is that I want to map through this array and create the answers in the UI, in the JSX. So it's easier to have them in one array, so we can have both the correct answer and the incorrect answers in one array instead. So I'm going to add a property in the object that we return here from the API. And we also have to specify that with Typescript, of course. And how do you do that? Well, I'm going to create another type. I export type, and I'm going to call it question state. So first, I grab the question that I created here, but I want to add something to this one. So I create an ampersand, and then I have an object. I'm going to create a new property that's called answers. And this one is going to be an array of strings. So like that. Do some auto formatting. So this will use the types from the question, but add this property to it. And it will create this question state type instead. So we're all good to go now. We can return the correct data here in the fetch quiz questions. Yeah, it's actually misspelled here. Questions, it should say. And then I need to change it in the app also. Like so. And also here. Yeah, something like that. Go back to the api.ts file. All right, so we know that we get our data. Then we have to return something. So I return, and from the data.results, I'm going to map through all of them and add this property that I talked about. So map, we have a question, and now we can specify it as a question from our type question, like that. We make an implicit return. We have a pair of curly brackets because we return an object. And then we spread the question. We want to use all the properties that we get from the question, and you can do that with ES6 syntax that's called spread. So that's what we're doing here. And then we add the new property of answer. And there's actually one more thing I want to do, because I want to shuffle the array here. Otherwise, the correct answer will always be on the same place. And that's why I created this utils.ts file. So move inside of that one, and we create another small function here, export const. Shuffle array. And this one takes in the array, and it can be of any type in the array. For this one, we have an arrow function. So this array that we give this function, I'm going to create a new array by spreading it inside of a new one. This is also ES6 syntax, spreading it inside of here, creating a new array. And then I use sort, give it an inline arrow function, and use math.random minus 0.5, do some auto formatting. And this is kind of a quick fix for creating a randomizer function. It's not completely accurate, but in our case, it will do. So this have to do. For now, this is not a tutorial about creating random functions. So this will do the trick for us. This will do the job. So save it and go back inside the api.ts file, and up here at the top, we can import this one. So import shuffle array from // and utils. Like so. So go back below here where we create the object, and inside the answer property, I'm going to call the shuffle array and give it the array that I want to shuffle. So yet again, I use ES6 syntax. I create an array. I spread from the question dot the incorrect answer. You can see here, Typescript gives us all the properties that's available for us. So the question dot incorrect answer, and then from the question dot correct answer. So we spread all the incorrect answers and the correct answer, and then we shuffle it with this function here. Do some auto formatting, and it will look something like this. Yeah, and before we do anything, this one should be incorrect answers. Like so. I keep forgetting these S's. I don't know why, but I keep forgetting them. Make sure that it says incorrect answers with an S, and also change the type to that one. Save it. And this one goes also here. This property here should be called answers with an S. Yeah, because it says answers here also. So keep forgetting those S's, add them to these ones, otherwise it won't work. All right, save it, go back to the browser, reload it, and you can see now we have a promise here, but we can see that it's resolved. And if we look at the question here, you can see that we have the new property with the answers here. So we can see that the correct answer for this one is bull. We have that one inside of here, and the incorrect answers is bat, horse, and snake. And we also have these ones. So this is exactly what we want. Now we have an easy way to map through all the answers when we do that. All right, so let's get back inside of the code. This is the api.ts file. It's finished now, and also the utils.ts is finished. So back inside the app.tsx file. So in the types, we're also going to use the question state. So question state, that's the one that we created. We import that one also here, and now we can set. This one is going to be an array of the type question state. So we can specify that one here inside of the angled brackets. Question state and an array like that. Then Typescript will know, because we're setting this to an empty array, it can't really know what this is going to be. But by specifying it like this, we tell Typescript that this is going to be an array of question state. So we have to create this type for the answer object also. Just below here, we create a new type. We don't have to export this one because we're not using it in another component. Answer object equals, and the answer is going to have a property with a question. It's going to be a string. We're going to have the answer. And this is a string. We're going to have a correct. That's the Boolean. Like so. And then we have the correct answer. And it's a string. So the correct will tell if the user answered correctly, and the correct answer will have the correct answer. And then we have the user answer here, and we also have the question. And this is good to have a complete object like this, because if we, for example, want to extend our game and show all the questions in the end when the quiz is finished, we have them nicely in this array that's called user answers. We're not really going to do that now, but I created it this way so you can kind of extend from here if you want to do that. Now we can specify these user answers. So we create angle brackets and answer object and an array. So then we have all our types for the states. Save it and just make sure that it still works. It does, so that's great. So we're going to implement the start trivia function now so that we can start our game. So inside of that function, we have to do some stuff here. First, when we click the start button, we're going to trigger the API fetch. And that means that we're loading something. So we're going to set the loading to true. That's the first thing that we do. Then we're also going to set the game over to false, because when we start a new game, it's not game over. So when we've done that, when we set the loading and the game over, we can hit the endpoint. So we create a const new questions. Then we're going to await, and we call the fetch quiz questions. And we're going to give it the 2 arguments that it needs. It needs the total questions. And just as before, we give it the difficulty.easy as the second argument. All right, so that will grab the new questions and put it in this const here. So when we awaited this one and we have all the questions, we can set the questions with the new questions like that. And hopefully we have all the questions in this state. And in this tutorial, I'm not doing any error handling. So you could, of course, use a try or catch block, and if you want to catch the error or something like that. This video is already getting long, so I won't go into that here. But you should, of course, always do some error handling if you have an error. All right. Then we're also going to set the score to 0 because we're starting from scratch now. So it should be reset. And we set the user answers to an empty array. So we're kind of resetting everything here. So set number. We're also setting that one to 0. And then when we've done all of this, we hopefully have our questions in our state and everything is working. Then we can set the loading to false because we're not loading anymore. And this is it for the start trivia function. So save it, go back here and click start. You can see that we get the promise here. But that's because we're console logging it out here. We can remove this one here and actually just console log out the questions instead. So go back to the browser, press start. You can see that we have all the questions inside of here. And you shouldn't worry because you may wonder why, whoa, it renders a lot of stuff here. But that's fine. There's no performance issue here. That's because we have a lot of these states that will trigger a re-render, but it will only re-render stuff that is new for each render. So you shouldn't worry too much about that, especially not in a small app like this. All right, so we know that we have our questions in the state. That's fine. It's working. Really nice. But for now, also, you can see that it just says loading questions. We want to display the questions and the answers here also. So we can modify our JSX here. So first, this button here to start the game is only going to be displayed if the game is over or if the user has answered the last question. So we create curly brackets. We check if game over, or we have double pipe user answers.length equals total questions. Then we know that we're on the last question, and then we're going to display this button. It can get a little bit messy here now. So we have parentheses around that one. Otherwise we return null. And we have the ending curly bracket there, like so. I think. And you could also do a regular short circuit without this Turner operator if you want to do that. But I think it's great to return at least null. And as you can see now, it displays the button, but not now when we press it. So that's working. Okay, that's the start button. And then we want to show the score. We only want to show the score if we're not in a game over mode for this one. So curly brackets, not game over. We have another Turner operator, and otherwise we show null, and we have the end curly bracket like so. And the loading questions is only going to be shown when we load something. So curly bracket, loading, like so. And null, yeah. It may be better to just have a short circuit. I can do it like this for this one. So if it's loading, it's going to show this one. Save it, and we can see what we've got. So we have start, and next question, we start. You can see that the loading was showing, and we show the score. So this is working also. Go back to the code. And now we're going to bring back the question card. And the question card is only going to be shown if we're not loading and if we're not in game over. So we create a curly bracket, not loading, and not game over. Yeah, I do a short circuit here. A little bit messy here again, something like that. Do some auto formatting. So if we're not loading and if it's not game over, we're going to show the question card. Save it, go back to the browser, start. You can see that we have the question and the answers here. So that's sweet. And we have the next question button also. But we haven't implemented those functions yet. All right, that's the question card. And then we have the next button. And this one is only going to be shown if we're not in a game over and we're not loading and the user answers dot length equals number plus 1. And by doing this, we just want to show the next question when the user actually has put in an answer. So that's why we check it here. If the user answers dot length equals number plus 1. So we don't show it if the user haven't given us an answer yet. And the last thing we want to check if we're not on the last question. So number not equals total questions. But we have to modify this one also because we have to set it to -1. And then I have a question mark, parentheses. This is really messy here now. I'm going to move up the button inside of there. And down below here, colon and null. Yeah, it should just be 2 equal signs there, of course. And do some auto formatting. And I think that this will work. Go back to the browser. Yeah, so now it's not showing because we have to give an answer first before we're showing that one. Yeah, and it's telling me that it should have a key prop here. We're going to fix that one also. And that one is in the question card because here where we map through these ones, we should have a key. And we can give it the answer as a key, and this will make this arrow go away, or this warning. All right, so this is working now. Go back to the app.tsx. We're going to implement the other functions now, and then the game will work. And then we can move on to create the style for this one. So inside the check answer, first we're only going to run this function if we're not in a game over. So if not game over, then we get the user's answer. Const answer equals, and we get that from the e.currentTarget.value. Because this is when we press that button here. So you can see that we're calling this callback on click. And that's why we also have to set this value on here. So value, we give it the answer like this. Otherwise, we won't be able to read the value. So it's very important to set the value also on the button here on the question card in the question card component. Like that. Go back to the app.tsx. So from e.currentTarget.value, we get that value, and that's going to be the answer. Then we're going to check answer against the correct value or the correct answer. So const correct equals, and from questions, we have the current number, that's the question that we're on. We have the property that's called correct underscore answer, and we check if that one equals the answer. Then we know if it's correct or not. So this will give us true or false. Add score if answer is correct. So if correct, set score, and we have the previous score, and we add it by 1, like so. All right, so that's if it's correct, then we add to the score, and then we're going to save the answer in the array of answers here, and we have this answer object. We're going to give it the question, answer, correct, and correct answer. So that's what we're setting here. So save answer in the array for user answers. Something like that. Const answer object equals, and we create an object, question. And from the questions number, we grab the question, and then we have the answer, and then we have the correct. And this is also ES6 syntax. If this one is the same, this is exactly the same as typing out answer. When these two are the same, we just need to type it out once like this. And then we have the correct answer. And from questions and the number, we have the property that's called correct answer. Do some auto formatting, and this will make sure that it creates this object with the data about the answer, and then we need to put it in the answer array. So set user answers. We have the previous state, and we create a new array, spread out the previous, and we give it the answer object. Auto format it and save it, and this should be it for the answers. Go back to the browser, see that it works, reload it, start. Yeah, you can see the next question is showing up also, but it's not working now because we haven't implemented this function, but it seems to be working. So we just have to implement that function also, and then we have a fully working game, but it will look like crap because we haven't styled it yet. So we have the next question function here. Move on to the next question, if not the last question. So we have to check if we're on the last question. So const next question equals number plus 1, because the question we're currently on is the number, and then we add to 1, and then we can check if this is the last question or not. So if next question equals total questions, we know that that one is the last question, because total questions is always going to be one number ahead of the number, because we're using this for the array that starts at index 0, and this one doesn't do that, so we have to add 1. So when we check the next question with the total questions, that will give us the answer if we're on the last question. And if we're on the last question, we set game over to true, like so. Else, we're not on the last question, so we can set the number to the next question, like so. Auto format it and save it, and go back to the browser, reload it just to be sure, and start. Select an answer. Which of the following was not one of the magnificent 7? Oh, I really don't know, actually. Next question, and you can see it will move through the questions. We can't see the correct answer now because we haven't styled it, but it seems to be working. Let's see what it does when it's on the last question. Yeah, you can see it displays the start button when we're on the last question, and it's not displaying the next question. So we can restart the game, and it's working quite nicely, I think. But as I told you, we can't really see if we're put in the correct answer, because we do all that stuff with the styling. And that's what we're going to do next. We're going to use style components to style this quiz. All right, before we move on with the styling for this one, I'm going to fix these types because I forgot that we had these any types here. And if we can fix it, we should do that. So we can type this correctly. And we're going to change this callback and the user answer. So for the callback, we already have the types for that one in the app.tsx file. If we go down here to that function, the check answer function, we're already typing this one here. So we can just copy this one like that. Copy that one, go back to the question card.tsx file and replace the any with this one instead. And we're going to return void for this one. We're not returning anything, so we can specify it as void. So that's the callback. And the user answer, we actually created a type for this one also in the app.tsx file. We have this answer object. I think I said that we didn't need to export this one, but we have to export it because we can use it in the question card now to specify that type. So add an export to that one, and then we can import it in the question card.tsx. So add an export, save the file, and then go back to the question card.tsx, and up here we can mark it with types. So import answer object, and we import it from ../app. Something like that. So we have the type here now for the user answer. So instead of any, we can use answer object, but it can also be undefined. So we create a pipe and specify it as undefined, like that. Save the file. And there's also one more thing we have to do now, because down here, this one disabled, it wants a Boolean, and this one is not a Boolean now. So if we want to convert this one to a Boolean value, we can use double bangs, double exclamation marks, or we can specify it like this with a turner operator. If we have the user answer, we set it to true, otherwise we set it to false. So it's up to you, you can use whatever you want, but just make sure that you give this one a Boolean value, otherwise it won't work. So this is it, this is all the types now. We don't have any type now, except in this utils function, because this one can take an array with any value. So make sure to save the files, and I'm also going to check so that it works. Go back to the browser, reload it, and it still works, and that's great. So that's the types. Let's move on with the styling. Okay, we're going to give this quiz some styling, but first we have to also make sure that we display the score. I forgot that one. So we have this state with score. So move down here to the JSX in the app.tsx component. Just somewhere here. Yeah, here where we set the score. We're actually not showing anything there now. So we're going to add that one here. So we have curly brackets and we show the score like that. So this will make sure that we show the score to the user, and you should be able to see. Yeah, I got a score 1 there. Yeah, so you can see that it's displaying nice. All right, so we're going to create a new file now. We're going to create some styling for the app.tsx file first. So inside the source folder, the src folder, create a new file, app.styles.ts. And we're going to import some stuff from style components. So import styled, comma, and then with the structure out, create global style like that from .styled components. So styled is the regular thing that you import, and we're also importing create global style. I think it is self-explaining. We're going to create some global styling with that one. So that's the first thing that we're going to do. But first we also want to import our background image, BG image, you can call it whatever you want, from ./images/ and then we have that. I really don't know why it can't find it. Yeah, and this one is complaining because I removed the test file before. I think that shouldn't matter. But this is strange. I think we just create a ts ignore for this one for now. Something like that. I think it will work. We'll see if it works later. So export const. global style. You can call it whatever you want. You don't need to call it global style, but we call the create global style with double backticks, and we can create a global styling. So first we set the HTML. I'm going to set the height to 100% on that one. And just as usual, when I style stuff like this, there are some room for optimization. I think I just did these styles really quickly. So there probably will be more effective ways of doing stuff here. But I'm in a summer vacation mode now, so this will probably be one of the last videos before I take a well-deserved vacation. So that's why I actually didn't think I was going to do this before the summer, but then I felt, yeah, why not? So that's why I created this one. All right, so we have the body, we set the background dash image to the URL, and then we can grab this URL with $, curly brackets, bg image like that. And then we set the background size to cover. I set the margin to 0, the padding is going to be 0 and 20 pixels. I set the display to flex and justify content to center. So that's the body. And then I have an asterisk. I'm going to set the box sizing to border box. And then I'm also going to set the font on every element on this one. So font family Catamaran and sans serif as a fallback font. All right, so that's the global styling. I'm actually going to import that one in the app component now to see if this background image works. So go back to the app.tsx file, and up here, I mark it with styles. I import global style from /app.styles. And then when you create a global style with style components, we get the regular component here, so we can use that one down in the JSX. We can put it somewhere here at the top. So I create a fragment because JSX can only return one element. I close it here, and then we can use the global style component like this. Do some auto formatting and save it, go back to the application. Yeah, and the image works. I don't really know why it complained there. So if it complains, just add that little comment there that I created to comment this one out. I don't really know because it worked in my other application when I created this example. So don't really know why. But that's the global styling, and then we can do some styling in the app itself. So export const. I'm going to create a component that I call wrapper style.div double backticks. It's going to be displayed as flex. Flex direction is going to be column, and align items is going to be center, like so. Then I want to style the p tag in this wrapper. So I created a forward arrow and the P to just style the P tag in this app wrapper. I don't want it to be styled on all the P tags. So I set the color to white. So that's the P tag. Then I'm going to have a class that I call score, and that's of course the score table. I set the color there also to white. We could of course specify some CSS variables for the colors if we want to do that. That's one way you can optimize this CSS. I set the font size to 2 rem. The margin is going to be 0 on this one. All right, so that's the score class. Then we have the h1 tag, and this is going to be this one up here. That's going to be the actual logo that I'm styling with CSS. All right, so the font family is going to be Fascinate inline, not impact. Inline, like that. Then I set the background image And this one is going to be the linear gradient. So linear dash gradient. And inside it's going to be 180 degrees, 180 deg. I set the first value to white. And the second one is going to be 87F1FF. And to be able to show this linear gradient in the font, we also have to set the background size to 100%. And the background dash clip is going to be text. And then we can also set all the WebKit stuff here for this one. So WebKit dash background clip is going to be text. WebKit dash text dash fill color is going to be transparent. And we have the moss dash background clip. It's going to be text. And we have the moss text dash fill dash color is going to be transparent. Double dash maybe. All right. And then we're going to have some drop shadow on this one. So we set the filter to drop dash shadow and 2 pixels, 2 pixels. And the color is going to be 0085A3. The font size is going to be 70 pixels. Text align is going to be center. And the margin is going to be 20 pixels on this one. Okay, we're not really finished yet, but we can import these styles inside of here in the app.tsx file just to see that this one works. So we import the wrapper. And below here, we have to change our JSX because now, instead of this div with class name app, we're going to use the wrapper component. And make sure to also close it down below here. Save it, go back to the browser, and you can see that it's not quite working here, and I don't know why. I think it's those app.styles. I think maybe these ones should be just one. And I also want to set the font weight to 400 on this one. Save it, go back. Yeah, and now it's working. So there's a little bit of trouble doing stuff like this. As you can see, there's a little bit of special syntax here to get it to work. If you don't like to do it this way, you can save that logo as an SVG file instead, and that will also work just fine. All right, then we have a couple of more classes here. So we have the start and the .next class. I'm going to set the cursor to a pointer. I'm going to set the background on these ones as a linear gradient. 180 degrees on that one also. I set it to white. And the second color is going to be FFCC91. So that's the start and the next button. We set the border to 2 pixels solid. And the color is going to be D38558. Like so. I'm going to have a box shadow. 0 pixels, 5 pixels, 10 pixels. And then I set the RGBA 0, 0, 0, and 0.5. No, 0.25 on the box shadow. I set the border radius to 10 pixels. And the height is going to be 40 pixels. The margin is going to be 20 pixels, 0. And the padding is going to be 0, 40 pixels. Like so. And then I want to do some special styling on the start button. So max dash width is 200 pixels. Auto format it and save it. Go back to the browser and this should be it. Hopefully start. You can see that the next button is also styled here, but we're not styling the actual question card now. So that's what we're going to do next. All right. So inside the components folder, we have our question card. So create a new file, question card.styles.ts. And for this one, we import style from style components. Then we export const wrapper style.div. You can see also that in this tutorial, I just create a wrapper and then I have regular classes. You can, of course, create a style component for each little thing if you want to do that. But sometimes I think it's overkill, so it's just enough to have this wrapper and I create classes. In this case, I'm also going to have a button wrapper on this question card, so I create 2 components for this one. But it's fully legit to just have a wrapper and then you can have your classes inside if you don't want to create a style components for every little thing in your application. All right, we set a max width on this one to 1100 pixels. I set the background to EBFEFF. I set the border dash radius to 10 pixels. I set the border to 2 pixels solid, and the color is going to be 0085A3. The padding is going to be 20 pixels, and I have a box shadow on this one also. So box shadow 0 pixels, 5 pixels, 10 pixels, RGBA 0, 0, 0, and 0.25. And the text align is going to be center. Right, then I style the p tag for this one. We're going to set the font size to 1 rem like that. So that's the wrapper component. Then we have the button wrapper. So export const button wrapper equals style.div. And this one is actually going to take in some props. And how do you do that in style components? Well, we can create a type here, for example, type button wrapper props. And it's going to take in 2 props, correct. That's going to be a boolean and user clicked. That's also going to be a boolean. All right. And to use these props in the style components, we create angled brackets here and we specify the button wrapper props. And then we have double backticks. And then we can go on just as usual here. And on this button wrapper, I'm going to set a transition. I'm lazy. I'm just turning it to all 0.3 seconds and ease. The hover is going to be, I set the opacity to 0.8. When we hover over the button, and then we have the button itself. So button, I set the cursor to a pointer. The user select is going to be none. I don't want the user to be able to select the text. The font size is going to be 0.8 rem. The width is 100%. The height is 40 pixels. The margin is 5 pixels and 0 on this one. Then we're going to set the background, and this one is going to be a nested ternary because we want to change the background depending on if we're showing the correct answer or if the user put in the wrong answer. So we set the background, and in style components, we can grab the props by $, curly brackets, and then I can destructure out them like this. So we have the correct prop and the user clicked prop. And then we have the inline function here. So first we're going to check if correct, if that one is true. I have a Turner operator, then I set the linear gradient to 90 degrees. And the color is going to be 56FFA4 as the first color, and the second color is going to be 59BC86. Like so. So that's the first linear gradient. So that is, if it's the correct answer, then it's going to show in green. Then we have the colon, And then we have a nested turner operator here. So if not correct, and the user clicked. So the user clicked is going to tell us if the user clicked on that specific button. So we have a nested ternary operator here. So we have another question mark. And I can actually just copy this one here and paste it in. And I can change these values here. This one is going to be FF5656. And this one is going to be C16868. And we add in the last one here, so colon. And we have the last linear gradient. So this one is going to be 56 CCFF and 6EAFB4. Do some auto formatting, but I have some mistake here. Yeah, that's because that question mark shouldn't be there. So auto format it, and that's the background. Then we have some few more properties to set here. I'm going to set the border to 3 pixels solid white. I'm going to set the box shadow 1 pixel, 2 pixel, 0 pixel, RGBA 0, 0, 0, and 0.1. All right, almost finished here with the styling. Border radius is going to be 10 pixels on this one. And the color is going to be white. And the last one is the text shadow. 0 pixels, 1 pixel, 0 pixel, RGBA 0, 0, 0, and 0.25. And auto format it. So that's the styling. Now we just need to implement it in the component itself. So optimize it if you want to do that. At least it works now, but it may not be the most optimized CSS. So go back to the question card.tsx file, and up here at the top, we're first going to import our styles. Import wrapper and button wrapper from /question card styles. Like that. And then we have to modify our JSX here a little bit. So first we have this wrapper div that of course is going to be the wrapper. Make sure to end it with the wrapper also. Then there's nothing here to change. This one is the button wrapper. So this one is going to change. It's going to be the button wrapper. And if you remember, we're going to send in 2 props to this one also. Because it's complaining now, you can see it wants 2 props. So the key is correct there. That's fine. But we're going to add in the props here. So correct. That's the prop. We're going to check the user answer. And here I'm using something that's called optional chaining in TypeScript. So I create a question mark, dot, and the correct answer. And I check it if that one equals the answer. We should have triple equal sign. So if I remove this one, we don't actually know if we have a value here. But if we use a question mark, this one will not throw an error. It will make this undefined if we don't have an answer here. So that's why I'm using the optional chaining. Then we have the user clicked. So user answer, yet again, I use the optional chaining. And dot answer equals answer. Auto format it. So if we don't have this one here, it will throw an error if we don't have a user answer. But by specifying like this, it won't throw an error. And I think this actually should be it. So save it, go back to the application. We try it out, start. And yes, we have our question here. That's what, okay, that was right. I didn't actually know that one. All right, the next question. So, as you can see, I answered wrong, but it's giving me the correct answer here. So everything seems to be working fine. Yeah, and that's the last question, and then it gives us the start button again. So the quiz is working. And that's super sweet. So this is how you build a fairly simple little quiz game with React and TypeScript. There are room for improvement, but hopefully this gave you some insight in how it is to build an application with TypeScript and React. So if you like this kind of tutorials, make sure to subscribe and support me. I will put out these tutorials regularly on my channel. And hopefully I see you in another one.